The assumption: the Galactic Council Chamber was a place of ceremony and power where delegates from hundreds of species gathered beneath glowing banners of their empires and colonies. For centuries, the chamber had rung with debates about trade, war, and the boundaries of exploration. Yet today a different kind of meeting was taking place. A new species had entered the interstellar community, a species still young in the eyes of the old civilizations, and their arrival caused both curiosity and laughter. These were the humans of Earth, a small blue world on the edge of the Orion Arm, who had reached the stars in record time. Many believed humanity's sudden appearance among the stars was simply due to borrowed technology, or perhaps reckless bravery, in dangerous ships. Every known civilization had relied on starships since the first discovery of faster-than-light drives. Great engines powered by antimatter, stabilized by gravity wells, carried fleets through the endless dark. No other method was possible or even imagined. To travel between the stars meant to own ships, vast and costly, carefully monitored and defended. Without them, no species could even set foot off their homeworld. That truth was accepted without question. So when the first human envoys arrived at the council chamber without any visible fleet, confusion spread. The arrival records showed no docking ships, no transponder signals were logged. Yet suddenly humans were there, walking into the chamber dressed in simple suits, calm and collected as if they had merely strolled across a street. The delegates exchanged nervous laughter, assuming there must be an error in the logs. Perhaps the humans had used small stealth shuttles that slipped past sensors. Perhaps their ships were hidden nearby. The explanations were endless, but none seemed certain. Ambassador Vaynar of the Thalkeen spoke first, his voice deep and mocking as he addressed the humans. He said no people could stand before the council without ships, and no one would respect a species that arrived by trickery. Others joined in, agreeing that Earth was clearly trying to play games, presenting themselves as more advanced than they really were. The laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound that made the humans stand silently, watching with unreadable faces. At last one of the humans, a woman named Ambassador Elena Ward, raised her hand for quiet. She explained in calm, measured tones that humans did not need ships to reach the stars. She said that Earth had found another way, a way no other species dared imagine. Her words drew a wave of disbelief and ridicule. How could a young and fragile species claim such nonsense in front of the council? Delegates muttered among themselves, convinced this was a bluff meant to win prestige or frighten rivals. Yet even as the laughter rose again, reports began to flow into the chamber from distant colonies. A mining world in the Garlus sector claimed humans had appeared in their settlements overnight. No docking records, no incoming ships, only sudden human presence walking the streets and speaking with the miners. Another outpost near the rim declared that human officials had visited their governor unannounced, vanishing hours later without leaving a trace of spacecraft. The reports were scattered and confusing, but too many to ignore. The council chamber grew restless. Delegates who had laughed now whispered in unease. Was it possible that the humans were telling the truth? Had they really found a way to move between stars without ships? If so, then the balance of power in the galaxy was under threat. Empires built on fleets and trade lanes might crumble overnight if humanity's claim was real. Ambassador Ward did not press the point. She only said that Earth sought peace and cooperation, but would not apologize for its nature. She left the rest unsaid, letting the rumors and doubts spread on their own. The human envoys turned and walked out of the chamber without explanation, leaving silence behind them. Every delegate watched them go, and many could not shake the feeling that they had just seen the first step of something that might change everything. The Galactic Council had always assumed ships were the heart of space travel, but that assumption had been cracked. For the first time in centuries, fear mixed with curiosity in the chamber. The humans had arrived, and they had arrived in a way no one could understand. First encounter. The rumors that spread across the council chamber soon turned into full reports, flooding the communication lines of empires and colonies. At first they were dismissed as errors or perhaps clever propaganda. But within weeks, every sector of the galaxy had at least one confirmed sighting of humans arriving on worlds where no ship had landed. Governors sent urgent dispatches describing strangers in human form appearing in cities and stations, walking calmly among populations that had no record of their arrival. Security forces scoured sensor logs, searched landing pads, and interrogated dockmasters, but there were never any ships, never any entry points, only the sudden, undeniable presence of humans where they should not be. On the trade world of Kalthros, a merchant port filled with constant starship traffic, the first encounter brought chaos. A crowd had gathered in the central market when 4 humans walked into the plaza, carrying nothing but simple packs on their shoulders. The guards demanded their docking credentials, but the humans offered none. Instead, they explained they had simply come to speak with traders and officials. Panic rippled through the square because no patrol ship had detected an arrival, and no civilian craft had reported passengers. Some believed these humans were ghosts or tricksters using forbidden teleportation. Others thought they must be agents of some hidden empire. The planetary governor ordered the humans detained for questioning, but the guards could not lay hands on them. Every attempt to grab them ended with the humans vanishing and reappearing several paces away, always calm, never aggressive, but untouchable. It was as if space itself bent around their will. The citizens watched in awe and fear while the humans finally bowed slightly and left the market, fading from sight as though the air had swallowed them. That night, the governor admitted to the council that the humans had defied every known law of travel. Similar events occurred across the rim. In the icy mining colonies of Drelth, human workers appeared in the tunnels offering tools and guidance on stabilizing dangerous shafts. The miners had no record of their entry, yet the humans worked side by side with them, disappearing once the crisis was resolved. On the lush world of Venril, officials claimed humans had stepped into the governor's mansion during a dinner with no guards reporting entry. They gave warnings of an approaching trade collapse, urged cooperation, and left without opening a single door. The Galactic Council tried to control the spread of these accounts, but it was impossible. Entire networks of information buzzed with fear and fascination. The oldest empires, who prided themselves on centuries of dominance, now whispered that perhaps humanity had found a secret even the ancients had missed. Every attempt to dismiss the reports only made the stories more convincing. The laughter that had once filled the council chamber was replaced by tension and unease. When questioned again, the human delegation did not provide blueprints or devices. Instead, they repeated that Earth had discovered another path, one that bypassed the need for fragile ships and endless fleets. They insisted they had no desire for conquest, only cooperation, but their refusal to explain the details convinced many species that humans were hiding a weapon. No empire could ignore the possibility that their entire defense structures, built around controlling starship routes and fleets, could be bypassed by beings who stepped from world to world without leaving a trace. Suspicion turned quickly into fear. The Dreval Imperium declared that humans were spies sent to destabilize galactic order. The Varan Alliance demanded immediate access to the secret of shipless travel. The Zerthi Syndicate began to mobilize fleets in case humans attempted sudden attacks. For every report of peaceful human aid, there were accusations of infiltration, sabotage, or subversion. Humanity's calm silence only deepened the paranoia. The truth was that no one understood how they moved. The most advanced sensors detected no energy surge, no wormhole signatures, no teleportation fields. It was as if humans simply ignored the distance between stars and stepped across space by instinct. For species who had built their entire civilization on ships, engines, and fragile metal hulls, the thought that such tools were unnecessary was not just terrifying, it was insulting. And yet, there were those who admired it. Smaller colonies, often ignored by the great powers, began to see the humans as protectors. They spread stories of human visitors who brought medicine, who warned of incoming disasters, who appeared in the dead of night to stop pirate raids. To them, humanity was not a threat but a hope, a force that could bypass the arrogance of the mighty empires and stand with the weak. By the end of that season, the first encounter had become 1,000 encounters. Every species now knew that humanity could not be ignored. They had arrived without ships, and in doing so, had shattered the single truth that had united the galaxy for ages. No one laughed any longer. They watched and waited, wondering what the humans would do next and whether the stars themselves now belonged to them. The investigation, the great powers of the galaxy could not remain still while whispers of human shipless travel spread from world to world. The Galactic Council authorized an investigation led by a coalition of scientists and military observers, and they were determined to strip away the mystery and expose whatever hidden technology Earth was using. Fleets were dispatched not for open war but for observation and capture. The plan was to detain human travelers, seize their supposed cloaked vessels, and force the truth into the open. The first success came on a barren planet at the edge of Drevel territory. Scouts reported the presence of a lone human operating among the ruins of an abandoned colony. Elite soldiers descended on the settlement, surrounding the human before he could vanish. The man did not resist as they bound him in energy restraints and marched him into a transport chamber. The soldiers felt triumphant, certain they had caught the key to the mystery. The human, however, showed no fear. He walked calmly, watching, his captors with quiet eyes, as though the outcome had already been decided. He was taken to a research station orbiting a nearby gas giant, where scientists of several races gathered to examine him. They expected hidden implants, molecular cloaking devices, or advanced personal teleporters. Scanners probed his body, searching for technology, but found nothing. His biology was entirely human, unaltered by machines. The scientists grew uneasy, as they realized that if this man had traveled between stars, he had done it without any device they could detect. During questioning, the human gave no technical secrets. He only answered in fragments, speaking of how space was not as rigid as the empires believed, how distance could be bent like fabric, and how the human mind could learn to fold that fabric if it dared. The interrogators accused him of lies. Yet when they left him locked in his chamber overnight, they returned the next morning to find the room empty. The restraints were unbroken, the doors sealed, the guards awake, but the human was gone. The only evidence of his presence was a faint disturbance in the energy readings of the room, a ripple no one could explain. This failure terrified the council. If humans could escape from high-security prisons without ships or machines, then no fortress was safe. No ruler, no stronghold, no fleet could keep them out. The investigation continued with greater urgency. Teams followed reports of human sightings attempting to trap them, but each time the humans slipped away. Some witnesses claimed the humans simply stepped into shadows and vanished. Others said they walked forward into empty space and were gone. On the world of Travelon, a team of alien scientists finally recovered something more concrete. A human visitor had written symbols on the ground before disappearing. The markings were studied intensely, and after weeks of analysis, the scientists realized they were equations describing spatial curvature and probability waves. The formulas should have been meaningless, yet when tested in simulations, they hinted at ways to bypass conventional travel by exploiting hidden folds in reality. Many of the scientists who saw the results collapsed in shock. For centuries, they had believed such manipulations impossible. Now, a young species from the edge of the galaxy had not only imagined them but mastered them. The discovery spread quickly and fear turned into panic. Empires demanded humanity share this knowledge, claiming it was too dangerous to keep hidden. If humans could walk from one star to another, then every fleet and border became worthless. The Drevel Imperium proposed a united blockade of Earth, hoping to pressure them into submission. Others hesitated, fearing such aggression would provoke humans into demonstrating their power more openly. Still, the Council could not contain the tension. Each empire feared the others would strike first, seizing the secret for themselves. Paranoia grew, alliances trembled, and whispers of war filled the chambers of government. Meanwhile, humans continued to appear wherever they wished, calm and silent, speaking only when they chose. They offered aid to some, warnings to others, and vanished when threatened. No force could stop them, and every attempt to control them ended in confusion and humiliation. The investigation had been meant to reveal weakness, to prove humans were nothing more than tricksters with advanced devices. Instead, It revealed something far more dangerous, a truth that the galaxy was not ready to face. Humanity did not travel the stars with ships. They traveled the stars with themselves, bending reality in ways others could not imagine. The scientists who glimpsed this truth struggled with madness, their worldviews shattered. The politicians who heard the reports whispered in fear, and the soldiers who had tried to capture the humans now spoke of them in hushed voices as if they were spirits rather than mortals. The investigation was supposed to end the rumors, but instead it only deepened the terror. Humanity was no longer an enigma to be solved. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy knew that the rules of travel, power, and war were about to change forever. Escalation. The revelations from the investigation ignited a storm across the galaxy. The Drevel Imperium, the Varan Alliance, and the Xerthi Syndicate gathered their fleets at border zones, convinced that humanity's refusal to share their method of travel meant they were preparing for domination. For centuries, the balance of power had been maintained through fleets of warships that patrolled trade lanes and protected colonies. Every empire believed its security rested on the size and strength of its navy. Now all of that was threatened because one young species had shown that fleets might no longer matter. In council sessions, voices grew heated and angry. Delegates demanded that Earth reveal their methods, insisting that shipless travel was too destabilizing to remain secret. Some argued that humans should be forced to give up their knowledge, while others feared that even attempting to pressure them could lead to disaster. The very air in the chamber carried tension, as though war could erupt with a single word. The human delegation remained calm and silent through the shouting, repeating only that this was not a weapon but a path unique to their kind, and that it was not meant to be abused. Their words, instead of easing fears, only deepened suspicion. Outside the council, entire societies debated the meaning of human movement. Civilians wondered if their homes were safe. Could humans appear inside their bedrooms or their banks or their fortresses without warning? Merchants feared for trade, asking how shipping lanes could be protected if humans could ignore them. Soldiers whispered that no wall or fleet could keep humans away. The unease spread like fire through every world, from the grand capitals of ancient empires to the mining outposts on forgotten moons. The Drevel Imperium was the first to act. They announced that humanity was a galactic threat, and ordered their fleets to blockade the Sol system. Massive battleships and cruisers gathered at the edges of human space, armed and ready to strike. Their commanders believed that if they isolated Earth, the humans would be forced to submit. Yet, as the blockade formed, reports came in that humans were appearing far beyond Sol, speaking with allies, aiding colonies, and even stepping into the very war rooms of Drevel admirals. The fleets could blockade Earth, but they could not blockade humanity itself. Other empires prepared in different ways. The Varan Alliance began secretly building experimental weapons meant to disrupt whatever force humans were using, even though their scientists admitted they barely understood the equations humans had left behind. The Xerthi Syndicate chose a more desperate path, hiring mercenaries and assassins to hunt human envoys wherever they appeared. These efforts ended in humiliation, for every assassin reported that their target had simply vanished before a strike could land. Some returned with wild stories of humans who walked through walls or stepped out of shadows. Others never returned, at all. Within the smaller colonies, a different mood took hold. Many welcomed the humans, grateful for their unexpected aid. On the storm-racked world of Helvar, human operatives appeared in the middle of a disaster, guiding entire settlements to safety before disappearing into the rain. On the agricultural moon of Tiral, farmers told of humans who appeared with medicine that cured a plague sweeping through their crops. These colonies began to see humans not as invaders but as protectors, a force that could slip past the arrogance of the empires to help those in need. The escalation reached a breaking point when the Drevel Imperium launched a covert raid on a suspected human outpost beyond Sol. Their soldiers stormed a settlement only to find themselves surrounded by humans who had appeared from nowhere. The battle lasted less than an hour. Drevel forces reported that entire squads vanished mid-fight, their weapons torn away by invisible forces, their officers isolated without warning. In the end, the survivors were released unharmed, but the message was clear. Humanity would not be intimidated, and they would not fight by the rules the empires had written. This incident shook the galaxy more than any council debate. For the first time in living memory, an imperial fleet had been neutralized without a single ship destroyed. Every admiral and general knew then that traditional warfare had lost its meaning against a species that could move wherever it wished. The great empires still clung to their fleets, but their confidence was cracked. Fear now sat on every throne. And yet through all of this, the humans remained quiet. They did not seize territory, they did not declare conquest, they did not boast of their abilities. They simply appeared where they chose, sometimes offering aid, sometimes warning of dangers, sometimes vanishing without a word. The galaxy could not decide if this restraint made them more dangerous or more trustworthy. The only certainty was that the age of fleets and ships was ending, and a new age was beginning, one written by humanity's hand. The demonstration? The uneasy balance in the galaxy could not last forever. Tension had reached its peak as fleets continued to gather along human borders, yet humans seemed unconcerned. They went about their strange appearances and disappearances, ignoring the posturing of empires, until the day a Dreval warlord decided to prove his power. Believing that fear of humans was weakening his empire's grip, he ordered his fleet to strike a newly founded human colony on the frontier. This would, he told his admirals, send a message that humans were vulnerable, and that their so-called shipless travel could not protect them from the crushing weight of true military might. The fleet descended on the colony, dozens of heavy cruisers and troop carriers bristling with weapons. From orbit, they unleashed bombardments meant to flatten defenses before landing soldiers. The colony had only modest fortifications, barely enough to resist raiders, and by the standards of the galaxy, it should have fallen within minutes. Dreval, officers congratulated themselves even before the first troops touched ground. But then something happened that would echo across every world for centuries. Human soldiers began to appear inside the Dreval flagship itself. At first only a handful materialized in the corridors, armed with compact weapons and moving with quiet confidence. Guards rushed to contain them, but each time more humans appeared, emerging in places no transport pods or shuttles could reach. Within minutes, the bridge of the flagship was surrounded, its officers disarmed before they had even realized the scale of the infiltration. The fleet's command structure crumbled as panic spread from ship to ship. Reports came from across the Dreval formation that humans were materializing in engine rooms, weapons bays, and command decks. No alarms warned of incoming boarding parties because there had been no boarding pods. The humans simply stepped into existence wherever they chose, disabling systems, cutting communications, and overwhelming crews. Entire vessels surrendered, without a shot fired into their hulls because their captains found humans standing over them, weapons drawn, demanding peace. The Dreval warlord, once so confident, was dragged from his throne room by humans who had appeared there as if summoned by thought. Meanwhile, on the colony below, settlers looked up to see Dreval troops withdrawing in confusion. Dropships lifted, off in disarray, soldiers shouting into broken comms their commanders already captured. What should have been an easy conquest turned into a rout. In less than an hour, a fleet large enough to challenge any empire had been rendered powerless. Not by a superior armada, but by a species that needed no ships at all. When news of this spread, the galaxy trembled. Never before had an empire's fleet been defeated in such a manner. Admirals studied the reports in disbelief, unable to explain how humans could infiltrate entire warships without detection. Scientists demanded access to survivors, desperate to find some trace of the method, but all they found were terrified officers describing soldiers who simply appeared and disappeared at will. Politicians who once mocked humans now spoke in whispers about whether any fortress, any palace, or even the council chamber itself could be secure against them. The demonstration changed everything. No longer was humanity a curiosity or a rumor. They had shown the galaxy that fleets and weapons meant nothing to them. They had not destroyed the Dreval ships, nor had they slaughtered the soldiers. Instead, they had proven that they could neutralize power without wasting lives, appearing and vanishing until resistance collapsed on its own. That restraint made the act even more unsettling, because it showed control and purpose rather than recklessness. For smaller colonies and weak nations, the news brought hope. They saw in humanity a force that could shatter the tyranny of larger empires, a shield against the fleets that had bullied them for centuries. For the great powers, however, it was a nightmare. They had spent generations building fleets, training armies, and fortifying their borders, yet all of it had been rendered useless by a species that refused to follow the rules of war. The Galactic Council convened again, the chamber heavy with silence as delegates replayed the reports. Every empire was forced to accept that humanity could not be controlled through intimidation. The blockade of Seoul was meaningless now, for humans could appear anywhere they wished, regardless of fleets or borders. The warlord who had begun the Udir assault was humiliated, and the Dreval Imperium found its once feared fleets mocked as powerless relics. And still the humans did not boast. Their envoys stood before the council and calmly stated that they had only defended their people, that they sought no conquest, but they warned that if threatened again they would act the same way. Then, before the council could respond, the envoys stepped out of sight and were gone, leaving the delegates staring at empty space where they had stood. The demonstration had not only defended a colony, it had rewritten the very meaning of power in the galaxy. Humanity had shown what it could do, and every species now lived with the knowledge that at any moment, without warning, humans could appear among them. Borders no longer mattered, fleets no longer guaranteed safety, and the galaxy was forced to ask what kind of future awaited them in a universe where ships were no longer the masters of the stars. The fear, the defeat of the Dreval fleet, should have brought relief to the galaxy, for many had feared that humanity would answer aggression with annihilation, yet the restraint humans showed only deepened the unease. They had not destroyed the warships or slaughtered the soldiers. They had simply appeared, dismantled the command structure, and left the fleet powerless. This calm demonstration of overwhelming ability was more frightening than a brutal victory. It showed not only power but absolute control, and control was what the galaxy's empires feared most. Across the stars, whispers spread through every hall of government and every marketplace. Admirals and generals asked themselves how they could defend their worlds if human soldiers could step into their command decks without warning. Spies and ministers wondered if humans could appear in their homes, listening to secrets or stealing plans. Even ordinary citizens began to question whether any wall or lock meant anything in a universe where humans could simply ignore them. Fear became a constant presence, like a storm cloud over every world. The Dreval Imperium tried to downplay their humiliation, claiming the battle had been a misunderstanding, but no one believed them. Their rivals in the Varan Alliance mocked them openly while hiding their own terror. The Xerthi Syndicate, always quick to act through shadow, unleashed new networks of informants to track every rumor of human movement. Yet each report only confirmed the same truth. Humans appeared where they wished, did what they wished, and left before any hand could touch them. The old rules of power had been broken, and no one knew what would replace them. The Galactic Council chambers grew colder with each session. Delegates who once shouted in arrogance now spoke in hushed tones, watching every human envoy with nervous eyes. Some pressed harder than ever, demanding that Earth share its secrets, while others begged for alliances or treaties that might guarantee protection. Yet humanity gave no answers. Their envoys repeated the same calm message. They sought peace. They did not seek conquest, but they would defend themselves against any threat. Then, as always, they would leave without using a ship, vanishing from the chamber as though distance itself meant nothing to them. Paranoia took root in the minds of leaders. Empires that had once trusted one another began to turn suspicious, fearing that humans might favor one side over another. Old alliances fractured as rulers wondered if their neighbors had already made secret deals with Earth. Some governments ordered purges of suspected collaborators, accusing their citizens of harboring humans or aiding them. Entire colonies suffered, under suspicion, and riots broke out in cities where the fear of human infiltration grew unbearable. Meanwhile, humans continued to appear where they were least expected. On the desert world of Renkash, they walked into a slave market and freed the captives before vanishing. On the wealthy core world of Taraxis, They appeared in the office of a corrupt minister and revealed his crimes before disappearing again. On war-torn moons, they guided refugees to safety, ignoring the fleets and armies that thought themselves in control. To the oppressed and the forgotten, humans became a symbol of hope. To the powerful, they became a nightmare that could not be controlled. The fear grew into something deeper than paranoia. It became an obsession. Entire think tanks of alien scientists worked day and night, trying to replicate the equations humans had left behind, but none succeeded. They tried to bend space with machines, to create artificial folds, but the results were unstable and dangerous. Some experiments ended in catastrophic failures that tore research stations apart. Each failure only reinforced the terrifying idea that humanity alone possessed this ability, not through machines, but through something within themselves. In time, some began to whisper that this was not technology at all, but an evolution. Perhaps humans had developed an instinct no other species possessed, a way of perceiving space that allowed them to step between stars. If that was true, then no empire could ever replicate it. No scientist could ever bottle it, and no ruler could ever control it. The thought spread through the galaxy like a disease. If humans were not bound by ships, then they were not bound by any of the old laws of power. They were something new, something beyond. The galaxy was splitting into two camps. One side saw humanity as saviors, a force that might end the endless wars of fleets and empires. The other saw them as a threat to be destroyed before they remade the galaxy in their image. Both sides grew louder as fear deepened, and the fragile peace between empires trembled on the edge of collapse. Every world waited, uncertain of what the next day would bring, knowing that wherever they were, however far, humanity could already be there. And through it all, humans said nothing more. They walked their quiet path, stepping across the stars without ships, and left the galaxy to wrestle with the meaning of their existence. The fear had become greater than any weapon, greater than any fleet, and it was only growing stronger. The revelation. The galaxy had reached a tipping point, and every star system felt the tension that had been building for decades. Empires no longer acted with the confidence of invincibility, because the stories of human capabilities had spread too far and too wide. From the core worlds to the outer rim, every ruler, every general, every scientist knew that humans were unlike any species they had encountered before, and the uncertainty gnawed at them relentlessly. The question on everyone's mind was simple yet terrifying. How could a species that did not need ships to traverse the void possibly be bound by any law or treaty? On the rim world of Zareth, a coalition of alien leaders gathered secretly. They feared that if humanity decided to intervene directly in galactic politics, there would be no defense, and perhaps no negotiation that could survive their presence. They debated strategies and proposed fleets, yet each plan was dismissed as useless because humans did not need fleets. Humans could appear where they wished and disappear just as easily, without any warning or trace. The coalition was torn between preparing for war and hoping that diplomacy alone could avert catastrophe, while in the hearts of every delegate a deeper unease grew, because they knew humans had already decided whether to act or not. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Council of Elders observed the galaxy with quiet patience. They knew the fear their people inspired was inevitable. They knew the galaxy had underestimated them for centuries, and now the galaxy had learned the truth slowly and painfully. Humans had always relied on themselves, not on ships or engines or weapons to cross the stars. They had trained their minds and bodies to perceive the fabric of space differently. They had mastered instincts that allowed them to step across distances that would take fleets months or years in an instant. It was not technology but evolution. It was not skill but a natural ability that no one else had. In the void above Zareth, the first human emissaries appeared. They did not arrive in warships or transport pods. They simply stood in the air above the capital city, as if the distance of 1,000 light-years had meant nothing. Their presence silenced the coalition immediately. No weapon was raised, no alarm sounded. The humans did not speak at first. They looked at the leaders with calm eyes that carried neither anger nor malice, but a weight of authority that made every alien present aware of the gap between themselves and the species before them. The human spokesperson finally stepped forward, and their voice carried clearly across the chamber. They said that humanity had observed the galaxy for centuries and had interfered only when lives were at stake. They explained that humans did not seek conquest or dominion. They did not desire tribute or loyalty. They only sought the freedom to exist without having to fight against the constant schemes of empires that sought to suppress others. Their presence had always been a test, a measurement of how civilizations would respond to power that they could not control. The revelation sent shockwaves through the council. The leaders realized that the humans were not just capable of traveling without ships, they were capable of reshaping the galaxy by virtue of being human. Their calm honesty struck deeper than any fleet could. Their restraint was more powerful than any weapon. Their willingness to act only when necessary created a tension that would forever alter the way empires considered power and diplomacy. Over the following months, humans appeared in every crisis. They saved populations from tyrants. They prevented genocides. They dismantled fleets poised for war without firing a shot. They taught the galaxy that true power did not require dominance or destruction. It required understanding and control of oneself. Humanity became the standard against which every other civilization measured its morality and strength. And yet they remained elusive, always present, yet never imposing, always acting but never claiming glory. The fear that had once dominated the hearts of alien leaders transformed into awe and respect. They understood finally that humans did not need ships to travel the stars because humans had never been bound. By conventional limitations, they moved through the galaxy as they always had, independent, powerful, unstoppable, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Empires learned to negotiate not because of treaties but because they understood the consequences of provoking a species that could step across light years without warning, and as humans continued their quiet journey across the stars, the galaxy realized that the legend had been true. Humans were not limited by machines. Humans were not limited by technology. Humans were the masters of space itself, and any civilization that assumed otherwise would pay dearly for underestimating them. The universe had changed, and all who witnessed it knew that humanity would define the future of the stars for generations to come. Humans redefined the galaxy. The galaxy fell silent. As the true nature of humanity became undeniable, every empire, every faction, every species realized that the legends they had whispered in fear and disbelief were real. Humans did not need ships because humans had transcended the limitations of matter and space. They moved across light years as easily as walking across a room. Their minds and bodies had been honed for centuries to sense the currents of the universe and to step into them with precision and purpose. No weapon could threaten them, no blockade could stop them, no fleet could contain them, and yet humans did not strike blindly. They acted with judgment, with patience, with a vision that no other species could match. On the core worlds, humans appeared in council halls and marketplaces and research stations. Their presence caused immediate attention because they were not like the others. They were calm, deliberate, commanding without aggression. Their eyes seemed to see the intentions of all who looked at them, and their gestures carried weight that demanded understanding, not obedience. They spoke of peace, yet the galaxy knew that if provoked, humanity could unleash power that would erase entire systems in moments. Their reputation had always preceded them. But now the reality surpassed imagination. Everywhere humans went, they left change empires that had long oppressed others, learned to reconsider their actions. They dismantled plans of conquest, not with fleets or weapons, but with demonstrations of impossible capabilities. They saved colonies from destruction. They prevented wars before the first shot was fired. They taught the galaxy that strength was not dominance, but the ability to act with wisdom and courage. Their presence became a standard, a measure of what intelligence and evolution could achieve when not constrained by fear. The alien leaders who had once scoffed at the stories of human travel now shivered in awe. They realized that ships were only tools and humans were not bound to tools. Humans were instincts and discipline and courage manifested in ways that no technology could replicate. The galaxy began to change not through conflict, but through the quiet, unstoppable influence of humanity. They inspired hope and fear at the same time, and every species understood that their place in the universe would never be the same again. In the outer rim, the smallest colonies heard tales of humans walking between worlds without warning, and their hearts filled with both dread and admiration. Humans became the unseen guardians and the measured arbiters of justice. The civilizations that had once relied on fleets and armies now relied on understanding the patterns of human decisions and hoping to align with them rather than oppose them. Humanity had become the silent law of the cosmos, the pulse that reminded all beings that power came not from numbers but from vision and mastery of self. And as the stars themselves seemed to bow to the presence of humans, they moved quietly from one system to another, touching lives, teaching lessons, showing restraint, and demonstrating that true strength lay in knowing when to act and when to observe. The galaxy understood finally that humans were not a species to be underestimated. Humans were the defining force of existence, the axis around which futures turned. And all who witnessed their abilities knew that the stories of the past had been only a fraction of the truth, and that the age of humans had only just begun. The empires and species across the stars learned to live with the knowledge that humans were not bound by conventional rules, not bound by technology, not bound by expectation. Humanity had walked into legend and turned it into reality, and the universe had no choice but to recognize them as masters of space itself. The end.